I started writing when I had my two children, and my husband was away performing for long periods of time. So I was left at home with these two small boys, and that was when I started writing. And it was really, I think, because I suddenly found that I had time to really daydream, because small children, although they take up quite a lot of practical time, they don't take up much of your mental space. And I had no adult company for long periods while my husband was away. And then I just kind of started daydreaming. Little threads of ideas would kind of pop into my head, and then when the boys were asleep, I'd write them down. So that was how I actually started. And now I'm a full-time writer, and I'm very interested in writing for all ages. I mean, I do everything from picture books to books for sort of young adults. But one of the things I really like writing about is history. I love historical fiction. I was always really interested in history when I was a child. So it just kind of combines. I love being able to kind of look at a place and imagine the people that used to live there before we were. So that's where I get a lot of my inspiration from. And this latest book, Lightning Strike, brings all those things together. The inspiration for Lightning Strike, I was asked to write something for the roller coaster series, and I'd been kind of knocking around various ideas with my editor, but hadn't really kind of got anything very tangible. And then COVID hit, and my initial thought, just before we kind of went into lockdown, was, oh, well, that'll give me loads and loads of time to write. That's ideal for a writer. That's fine if I don't have to kind of go out and have meetings and do school visits and things like that. I'll be able to really concentrate on writing. And then, of course, when it really hit, it was so frightening and so scary and so weird that I just found I kind of couldn't really kind of come up with any ideas. And partly it was just the kind of fear and the weirdness of it all. But it was also partly that I was just so angry. I was getting so completely furious with the way things were going, because I could really see all around me that although people kept, officials, politicians, whatever, kept saying we're all in the same boat, it was so very, very clear that we weren't. That if you were pretty affluent and you had a big house and a big garden and you had the kind of job where you could work from home, that was a very, very different situation for you than if you were living in a small flat in a block with no outside space, and you had children and you were trying to hold down a job in the gig economy, and struggling. You had to go out and work on the front line in order to pay the rent or put food on the table. And so I was really enraged about this huge kind of disparity between the situation for the rich compared to those who were really kind of struggling financially. And it was making me so angry that I remember thinking, this is getting like Victorian England. We're getting this huge disparity between the rich and the poor. And it made me so furious. And, then I started kind of thinking about Victorian England. And this had this huge rage. And I was thinking, well, actually, maybe I should use that rage. Maybe that's what this book is going to be about. Maybe I should be writing something that's set in a similar kind of time to modern day, where you've got these huge disparities. A school play. One of my oldest son, he was in a school play a few years ago, and it's called The Match Girls, written by a man called Bill Owen, who was actually an actor as well. He was in Last of the Summer Wine, if anyone remembers that. And he'd written a play about the Match Girls, and it was a musical. And I went along to see this production that my son was in. And I hadn't ever heard of the Match Girls before. I knew nothing about them. And it was a brilliant play. It was really, really exciting. It's the most incredible story of this group of women who walked out and started this huge, they kind of more or less started the union movement. And they were really, really influential. And I, as an adult and a feminist, had never even heard of them. And I was, you know, so I'd come out of that play really quite kind of electrified by their story. And like I say, thinking about books to do for the roller coaster series, I suddenly thought, I wonder if I can do something about the Match Girls. So I went back to the play, got hold of a copy of the play, had a look at that. Then I carried on doing a bit more research. And when I discovered that most of those Match Girls had actually been teenagers, I just thought, wow, I've got to tell their story. Why did I choose to specify the locations? I think because actually very often when I'm writing historical fiction, I actually kind of make up places and names that are kind of based on real life, but I tend to make up, you know, because then it makes me a bit freer with what I can do, because there's nothing more sort of, well, there's lots of things that are more annoying, but it is quite annoying when if you've written a book and then somebody will go, oh yeah, but no, that building wasn't there at that time, you know, and you'll always have people kind of picking you up on things like that. So I tend to usually to fictionalize real locations and place names, but with this one I did stick with the real names. Because they just seem to me to be incredibly resonant. And I grew up just outside London, but I've spent a lot of time in London, and I've particularly spent a lot of time in that area of the East End and around sort of Hackney and Bethnal Green. And those names are just, they're just so great. And when I was reading and doing the research and you know, about the Match Girls marching, thousands of them marching up the Mile End Road, I could see it all in my head. And I thought, this is so located in that real location that I've got to use the real names and the real places. Oh, Eliza's character, it's I find writing absolutely fascinating, because sometimes you're very conscious that you're creating and developing and working on a character, and to begin with they're just kind of like real bare bones and they're like cardboard cutouts, and then with each kind of edit you do, you're adding flesh on until they become a fully rounded character. But sometimes, and this is what happened with Eliza, sometimes the minute you start to think about the story, it's like they have been waiting there just outside the door. And the minute you kind of open the door, they're just there in the room with you, telling their story. And then it becomes not like me creating something, it's just like taking dictation. And I could hear her voice, I could see exactly what she looked like, and it was like she was just kind of standing there telling it to me. And I just absolutely love her. I suspect there's probably a lot of me in Eliza. Certainly that rage and that fury against the world. Yeah, she was just there. She was kind of already in my head, I guess. Yeah, just one of the best characters I've ever had the privilege of writing. I think I just absolutely loved her. I suppose if anything, I would like to just take hold of her hand at the beginning of the book when she is feeling so impotent and so powerless and so unable to change things, and just say to her, you are much, much stronger and more powerful than you think. You just got to believe in that. I mean, that was what was so lovely writing the story, is that eventually, though, she actually discovers that for herself and is more powerful because nobody's told her that. She's actually discovered it all on her own. Well, and with her sister, of course. Her sister's great. I love her sister as well. Well, she starts off as being very angry at the world that she's kind of coming to herself. So she's becoming a young woman and she's looking around her at the world and realizing she just kind of has no choice. You know, the only choice for a girl back then would have been that, you know, to get married or to carry on working in the factory. there's nothing in between. And she says at one point that, you know, when she was a child, when she was small, she used to kind of imagine living in a big house and, you know, being able to wear a different hat every day of the week. And then as she gets into her teenage years, she realizes that that's just never going to happen for somebody like her. That's just not an option. And when she then really starts to look at the world around her, she realizes, you know, how unfair and how unjust everything is. And she is raging about it, but can't do a thing. And she's raging about it, but she also can't get it into words, which is really frustrating for her. And I'm not going to spoil what happens in the book, but during the course of the book, she discovers her words, and through that she discovers that she can do something about this, and that she can actually be the person that kicks off the changes that she would like to see. I think if Eliza was around in modern times, she would really she would be there, right, with Greta and Malala and all these amazing, wonderful young activists, changing the world for the better with a real fire and a real passion. She would, yeah, she'd be there on the front at the Black Lives Matter protest. She'd be involved with all of that. You know, that's that rage that she feels in the book. You know, and she's a Victorian young woman. It's also, you know, I mean, I see that in young people around me today, and righteous anger. You know. There's a lot of that, and yeah, it's kind of depressing in a way that what she feels and her desperate desire to kind of change the world around her is still, you know, that those issues are still here with us. But I think young people give me enormous amounts of hope, because they are so passionate and so engaged, and I think, you know, young people really will change the world and be the change that needs to happen. Including different characters, yeah, I think it was. One of the things that I'm quite interested with young activists like Greta and Malala is that they have very, very supportive parents. But with Eliza, I kind of wanted her to do it for herself. And so, you know, her parents are both kind of very flawed individuals. Her mother, in particular, being a very religious woman, thinks that Eliza and the family should accept the way things are, that this is all kind of ordained by God, and you should just accept your place and that you will get your reward in heaven. But as Eliza develops, she starts to really kind of kick against that. And I think I wanted it to be like that so that she could so clearly make her own decisions, and break away on her own without parental support. So she really becomes very much her own person, and realizes her own power. Oh, historical fiction. I think I've just always been fascinated by history. And again, I guess that's sort of where I grew up. You know, like I say, I grew up by the Thames, and you couldn't kind of go for a walk along the shoreline at low tide without sort of seeing bits and pieces and bits of pottery and sort of bottle tops and things. And you'd be picking up things from Victorian England, and you know, from all the kind of different layers upon layers of people that have gone up and down the Thames, you know, since Roman times and before. And all of that has kind of seeped into the mud, and sometimes, you know, brings up these objects. And so I've always kind of looked at places and been aware of who lived there before. And one of my brothers is very, very interested in prehistory. So he used to kind of drag us around Kent to all the kind of stone circles and burial mounds and things like that. So it was always kind of part of my life. And as an adult, I've come to realize more and more that you really can't understand the modern world without understanding the history. You can't understand where we are now without understanding what came before. And that's particularly relevant to the Black Lives Matter. Unless you know about our colonial past and our empire, and unless we look at it full on in the face with all its horrors and ugliness, you need to understand history in order to understand why we're in this situation that we are at the present. So that's kind of why I do it. And I think that's probably why it resonates with readers as well. That it does, as well as engaging with a character who's going through a particular struggle in a particular place. It kind of has a lot of relevance to modern day as well. So that's what I'm kind of trying to do with it. And in this one, in Lightning Strike, I think it just, I mean, the parallels are just absolutely kind of obvious in every page of the book, I think. I really hope, well, first of all, I hope that they're going to really, really enjoy the book, because I found it a really thrilling book to write, and I hope that they will find it equally thrilling to read, and I hope that they will fall as in love with Eliza the way that I did. But I think if for themselves, there's a lovely bit in it where she says something about she's just like a drop of water, and one little drop of rainwater isn't going to do anything on its own. But if you get hundreds and thousands of drops of water, you end up with a river as mighty as the Thames, and that nothing can stand in that river's way. And I would really hope that they'll take that message away, that they are, although you feel powerless as a teen, you feel everybody is forcing you into this, that, and the other. You are actually powerful, both as an individual, and if you get together with other individuals, you will be unstoppable. So I hope that message is what they'll take away. Well, my advice for readers is that you think of books as being like food. Sometimes you will be given a meal that you don't particularly like, but you would never end up thinking, "Oh, that's it. I've had enough. I don't do food. I'm never going to eat again." With food, if you didn't like a meal, you'd look for something else, maybe, or try something different. And you'd sample different things until you found out what you really like eating and what you don't ever want to touch again. And it's the same thing with books. Sometimes you get given something to read and maybe in school or by an adult, and you think, oh no, I didn't like that. I'm not doing books. I'm just not going to read again. No, but so think of it as being, you didn't like that particular one, but there are so many different books out there. There are so many fantastic books. So read what you like. And if you start something and you don't really, unless it's something you're studying in class, which does make it a bit more complicated, but if you read something and you really don't get on with it, put it away, go and find something else, and read all you can, and read for you. But also, if you're interested in writing, possibly the more you read, the more you will learn about what style of writing you're interested in, what kind of book, you're interested in, historical or contemporary, and really think about, the more you read, the more you will learn about it all. With writing, I think my top tip is switch off your devices. I know exactly what it's like. I will sit here on my computer and I will kind of have a bit of a look at Twitter, and then I'll have a look at Facebook, and then maybe I'll go and look at Instagram. By the time I've stopped flipping back and forth, an hour or two can have passed, and nothing solid will have gone through my head. I'll have just been kind of scrolling through. So my real top tip is switch off your computer, put away your phone, just sit and stare into space for a bit. If you want to write and you can't get any ideas, that's what you need to do. Switch everything off, stare out of the window, let your mind wander, because when your mind starts wandering, little wisps of ideas that are kind of floating around somewhere in the ether will start to drift into your brain, and you will start to get ideas, and that's how I always do it. These little thoughts, you know, start coming in, and then you can start to develop them. And I think the other really big thing is find something that you really care about, that you're really passionate about, and you can either love it or hate it. You can be happy about it or angry about it, but find something that really engages your heart and mind, and then write about it.